Now, I recently came across a video which, for all intents and purposes, sought to be the definitive definition of why PUA is better than MGTOW. Now, if you think at the outset that this video is going to be an exposition of why I think MGTOW is better than PUA, well, you might as well stop listening, or you'd be wrong. If you search the length and breadth of YouTube or the internet, you'll find that just about everyone is trying to sell you something. And by that, I don't necessarily mean a product that you spend your money on, but a particular worldview, ideology, a way of looking at things. And as we've noticed over the years, these different ways of looking at things tend to coalesce into groups, into masses of people who then adhere to a particular belief system, or at least they purport to adhere to a particular belief system. And what struck me about this video was nothing amazing, nothing outstanding about the video itself. It was another video, I've seen dozens of them, maybe hundreds of PUA saying why it's better than MGTOW, why PUA is good because you strive for excellence and blah blah blah. I'm not particularly interested in that. I'm not really interested in the PUA message, it doesn't appeal to me, but more specifically, I'm not interested in engaging in that type of groupthink. Now, if you've been with me for a long time on my channel, then you probably know that. In the sense of trying to sell you a group identity or a particular brand of thinking, I'm not really trying to do that. I'm trying to say, here's what I think about X. Let me know what you think about that. Maybe the way I think about X appeals to you, maybe it doesn't. But YouTube, and the internet more broadly, is just filled with this stuff of, I'm going to sell you my brand name. Here's my box of cereal. Go eat it with me. And of course, that begs the question as to why people do that. Why is everyone, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, trying to sell you his box of cereal? Confirmation bias, that's part of it. But the human ego revels in the affirmation and the confirmation of others. It reflects back to that ego that maybe, and it's a big maybe, the person selling you the breakfast of champions in this case is correct in his worldview. Because many people, in fact, I'd argue most people, whether they are consciously aware of it or not, are looking for a sense of certainty in an uncertain world. This can manifest itself across myriad domains. We see it in religion, we see it in political ideology, we see it just about everywhere. And that quest for certainty is a quest for self-preservation. History in the world is littered with the corpses of men and women who sought certainty in the face of doubt. And it is very, very tempting to cling to something that you may have doubts about, or cling to something that you know to be wrong, or cling to something just because it makes you feel good, rather than take the time and effort, step outside the box, step outside the matrix, as it were, and have another look at things, get a different take on things. That's pretty difficult, because it involves constantly challenging your worldview, which consequently means, of course, that you will always be in some kind of doubt. And most people don't want to be in doubt. They want to be out there, feet on the ground, resting on the earth, perhaps even attached to the earth in some cases. They don't want to be lost at sea. And all of the competing ideologies on YouTube and the internet and elsewhere in life, they all really can be boiled down to that. Of course, there are differences in the details. The devil is always in the details. But what is sought after, what is trying to be produced for the audience and for the content maker, is just that. A quest for the comfort of certainty. I can never offer you that. I'm not certain of anything. People often ask me, Stardust, why don't you take a position on XYZ? Why don't you take a position on ABC? Sometimes I will. And if I do so, it will always be with the caveat, I'm reasonably sure, or it's probable, or it's likely. I'm not going to say, this is the way it is. Bask in the glory of the truth. If I did, I suppose I would begin to sound like a preacher. Definitely don't want to be that. But that's why, at the outset of this video, when I said, well, it was a generic PUA video, I could say the guy's name, it doesn't really matter, he's reasonably well known, he does seminars, and rest assured there are plenty of MGTOW channels that do the same thing. Confirmation bias, calling to the masses, reveling in that ego thing, all so they can feel sure and certain about themselves and their footing in the world. And there's a reciprocity there between the people who make the videos, who put out content on the internet in general, and the people who consume it. They're both looking for that footing, and what they end up doing is to give each other an artificial footing, an artificial security. And why do I say it's artificial? Because anyone who spent any time in life knows that there is no certainty of that sort. Things can happen. Views can change. New evidence can crop up. We simply don't know, oftentimes. And as I said several weeks ago, we all have our own inherent biases and prejudices. I'm no different. I'm no better. I make this video with the full knowledge that I too am laden with human bias, error, and cognitive blindness in some cases. And what you can do about that, well, very little, because that's the human condition. To err is human, as the Romans once said. So this video is a lot less about telling you to do something and more about looking for you. How many of us actually these days, especially these days, take the time of asking who we are as individuals? We often ask ourselves where we're going, what we're doing. Oh, I'm making money, I'm at this job. I'm going to the gym, bruh. I'm getting fucking ripped, man. Fucking diety and shit, bruh. All that stuff, right? These are questions about where you're going. And in some sense, where you're going is part of a question of who you are, what you are. But it's a very difficult question to answer. It's a very abstract question. If I were to offer someone an injunction, and it wouldn't be an injunction, it would be a suggestion, it would be to be you. And it's very difficult to be you for a number of reasons. I've already cited some. The fragility of human ego, the search for certainty, the desire for certainty, that rock-solid footing in a world that can crumble before your eyes in an instant in some cases. And all these competing views that are tossed your way. What are you supposed to believe? Very difficult to sort yourself out when you're being assailed from every front and every direction with myriad different teachings, ways of looking at things. And rarely, if ever, do we ask ourselves, what am I? Who am I? This is particularly true of men, because men are, generally speaking, the sum of their doings, and don't have, you could say, a human nature that is at least apparent to the external world. The nature of man is such that his value is, of course, gained and gotten of his deeds. And so it's very easy as a man to get lost in the torrent of deeds, of always doing, of always moving forward. I used to have a friend. He told me once that he was sure he was going to work himself to death. And maybe, and this is an afterthought, I still spoke to him, I'm curious if he'd agree with me. Maybe that is, in fact, his own acknowledgement that if he took a step back from his workaholic lifestyle, he might be less content than he thought he was. Or he might not even know what he is and who he is. Instead, he works, and chases money. Fine, to each his own. But he told me on many occasions, I'm going to work myself to death. Remains to be seen if he's going to do that. But this is another way that men engage the world, and a way that men engage the world such that they are dodging some really important questions. You often hear people say, young men these days dodging responsibility. And there's nothing wrong with responsibility. I have nothing against it. If you want to follow a traditional track and path, more power to you. But that question of what it is to be you, and reaching that point where you actually feel comfortable being you because you have an awareness of who you are and what you are, rather than what you're doing or what you believe, because those two things coincide and exist within each other, on top of each other, to create a type of male identity. The male identity of deeds, of doing things, the only one a man has to the external world, and I would argue here the internal world, and the world of belief outside of yourself. So, quote-unquote, MGTOW philosophy, or quote-unquote PUA philosophy, or alt-right philosophy, or the reactionary, or the liberal, or whatever, and letting that define what you are, and as a consequence, letting that become the thing that you are ostensibly, as that thing which you now are becomes translated into deeds. You see the cycle here, gentlemen, the repetitive cycle. Men find things out there. They're looking for certainty too. Women are, absolutely. That appeal to them, whatever it might be, whatever philosophy, whatever religion, and they turn that into a chain of action. The only thing I'm suggesting here is that we all take a step back, away from the madness of the internet, away from the madness of certainty, and ask ourselves, just maybe, if there's something there that isn't attached to all of that. If there's something there that can be found in qualities that maybe only your intimate friends could recognize, or maybe only things that you, in your solitude, can recognize. It is possible. And I think, to my mind, and I could be wrong, that might be the best of all these very confusing worlds. You can acknowledge other people's points of view. I can acknowledge the PUA point of view. Likewise, with MGTOW fanatics and those who think that there's something singular and unique about MGTOW. If that's what you think, I would disagree with you, but more power to you. If you have a particular political view that keeps you going, more power to you. Whatever. But I think one of the main reasons why so few men take a step back, or indeed even can take a step back, as my former friend had confessed to me on several occasions, is the realization that if you strip away all the doings and the action and the external belief system, the validation system, there's nothing there. And that is terrifying. Terrifying to know that there isn't anything that you could essentially call yourself. That effectively you're just a duplicate of the other guy. Maybe you're doing something slightly different. And that you're just chasing the same things as just about everyone else. And whatever individual spirit you thought you might have had, well, I think at that stage when you examine the husk that you thought that you were not, well, it's pretty clear that the individual spirit isn't there. So, as I draw this video to a close, I want to point some things out. It is a very difficult task, maybe an impossible task. Nonetheless, I believe at least one still worth striving for, to be you. But to be you, the individual man, requires the ability to search for you. And if you can't shut off the blinkers, if you can't shut out the lights and all the noise and din out there trying to block your path, trying to obscure the way, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think there's going to come a time, and we don't all have deathbeds, some of us just die suddenly, in the twilight of our years, as life draws to its inevitable close, that the deeds that we do and were remembered by might seem to be all we have, and yet the whole time we missed out on what we could have been had we looked for ourselves, had we looked beyond the external. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.